So without further ado, and to kick off this exciting journey, I would like to welcome two guest speakers to provide also maybe different perspectives on ASEAN Smart Green City investments. So please allow me to extend a warm welcome to Mr. Abhineet Kaul, Director of Access Partnership Singapore office, who will provide a brief review of the ASEAN Smart City investment toolkit that they are currently developing for the ASEAN Secretariat as well, and that could potentially help you also to assess your project. And after that, we'll hear from Mr. Erlangga Atmaja, Director of Financial Advisory at Deloitte Advisory Indonesia. Abhineet, the screen is yours.
Would you be sharing the slides? Thank you. Sorry about this thing. As you know, these things happen. So maybe I'll just quickly talk about why we set up the screen in terms of what or who we are, what we do, and how are we participating in what the logic of our participation in this particular masterclass. So first of all, thank you for having us here. So at Access Partnership, we have been very fortunate to be partnering ASEAN on different aspects of the sustainable urbanization journey. We were involved in the master plan on ASEAN connectivity, the Impact 2025, the sustainable urbanization strategy, the review of ASEAN initiated infrastructure development projects. And now currently there's an ongoing study which we are working on where we are developing a smart cities investment toolkit. So there are these different areas that we are working on. If you move to the next slide, and very quickly, I won't go into the details of it, but very quickly, the ASEAN Smart City journey from Impact till where we are today with the investment toolkit. This has been a journey which has at least taken a decade, more than a decade now, where we have been looking at evolution of smart city, the whole ecosystem. But one of the things which has been very common, very highlighted time and time again, is that one of the challenges we face is on the financing aspects for smart city. And I'll talk about some of the things that we are trying to understand why is that a challenge, so that this toolkit which we are developing for ASEAN and the policymakers at AMS, for example, would help to address some of these issues and challenges. If you move to the next slide, as I said, we are currently developing this. So the idea of this toolkit is basically to help improve the understanding of the various tools and instruments available to fund smart city projects, right? We also want to, it's not enough just to say that these are the tools available. We are also trying to understand the enabling conditions and what are the other aspects which you require. What are the gaps, for example, in various AMS ASEAN member states right now in implementing these tools. And then also identify areas in which capacity building could be useful, best practices we can highlight. So that's the broad objective of the study. So we started the study, if you go to the next slide, obviously as we do in all studies here, talking to a wide group of stakeholders. Over 80 people we talked to over 80 stakeholders, all 10 ASEAN member state policymakers, the smart city officials, dialogue and development partners. We talked to experts from private sector as well. Who are obviously from the financing side of things, the developer side of things, who are involved in the smart city decisions or processes in ASEAN. If you move to the next slide. So we focused on 4 things as part of this process. We looked at, especially, COVID has changed a lot of stuff. And how has that defined or redefined smart city in different countries? How do they see characteristics of smart city? What are the trends which are impacting this development of smart cities in ASEAN? Are these new? Are these something different? Has the definition expanded, for example? Then we asked them about the funding and financing challenges. So what are the barriers they are facing? What support do they need, for example? And then finally, obviously, the core focus for our study is to understand how can this toolkit help them. So this is to help and shape drafting that particular toolkit. What sort of features should be there? How can we address the challenges which the cities are facing today when it comes to smart city financing? So that was a broad idea. And what I'll do is very quickly maybe take you through some of these things, and happy to answer any questions towards the end if there are any. If we move to the next slide. So we looked at 6 trends, and this is coming from the discussion with stakeholders, review of literature, urbanization. We all know there is challenges with that, overcrowding, water energy prices, the oil prices where they are going, the air quality issues in a lot of our cities. Healthcare needs have changed, especially after COVID. People are talking a lot more about healthcare data management, sanitation systems, for example. The working model has changed. How are you looking at digital nomads? How are you looking at remote working concepts, for example? Climate risk. We are in the time of the year when we have a COP going on in UAE. So how are we talking about climate risk, for example? How is our cities evolving to look into those? Digital divide and inclusivity, another critical aspects, not only in usage, but also the skilling aspect. So how are smart cities going to skill the people that would be important? And then also the things around smart city technologies, safety, security threats, cyber security threats. We have seen some of our countries are getting a lot of, we are like top in the world in terms of the number of hacks that we get in this part of the world. So how is the smart city going to address some of those issues? So we looked at these 6 trends in shaping the smart city ecosystem. Next slide. And we asked them as to how do they define smart city projects? And there are these different feedback we are getting from different stakeholders. Digital obviously is very, very critical. A smart city is digital. A smart city is forward-looking, that it looks at the future urbanization need. It's not just smart, but also smarter as it goes along. They are green and resilient, so the ecological balance, the nature positive, as well as the climate change mitigation aspects are built into a smart city. They are people-centric, so improve the lives of people, looks to provide better quality of life to people, and they are inclusive in the sense that they do not miss the vulnerable groups, for example, whether they are migrants, whether they are bottom of the pyramid people. So we look at all these various aspects in how they are defining, stakeholders are defining smart city today. And these are ASEAN member states. If you go to the next slide, one of the key challenge, obviously, we all know there is a massive financing gap when it comes to smart city projects. Different people have said different things, competing priorities for public funding. Sometimes the city objective are not aligned with national priorities. The funding are available for certain aspects, but not for the implementation aspect. So there are these different challenges, the technological know-how, the capacity building issues. A lot of those different areas people highlighted. Why is there a financing gap? If I move to the next one. And one of the challenges which we highlighted was when we look at all the smart cities in the world, what are the different funding mechanisms? And you will see a lot of those funding mechanisms. Thank you. A lot of funding mechanisms, but today, most of the ASEAN member states are predominantly using 3: direct government transfers, regional development funds, as well as technical assistance funds from different bodies. So we are very limited in the type of financing tools that we are using. Moving to the next slide. And why is that so? So we looked at 3 gaps. The fact that some said they don't have conducive legal and regulatory environment, for example, a public-private partnership. The second gap talked about we don't have enough familiarity, for example, with the funding mechanism, with private investors. And gap 3 was capacity in terms of understanding of other financing options, don't have the skills and gaps. So out of all this, we decided to develop this particular toolkit, which focuses specifically on gap 3, which is on the capacity building for ASEAN government officials, which is, this particular platform is very important as well. So we move to my final slide, which is the next one. Our toolkit basically focuses on gap 3, looks at a few things. It provides, and it's still development, work in progress. We haven't completed it, but this is where our idea is currently, and we are working on this. Developing of financing tools, which will include, for those financing tools, what are the enabling conditions which are required. So whether you need a policy ecosystem, whether you need skills, for example. It will help AMS or policymakers to shortlist specific tools for the type of project they're developing, identify some real-life examples, case studies, and also certain third-party resources which will help them develop further. So that's the idea right now for Toolkit. I will maybe just stop here and maybe just highlight the fact that the whole aspect here is the toolkit is just a mechanism. to help address some of the challenges which comes from the overall smart city financing. And happy to hear your views, your thoughts, your questions later as we go along. So back to you, Marco.